The FESTSPACE project is a HERA-funded European project focused upon the relationship between festivals and events and public space. We have 5 partners. So we have University of the West of Scotland, which is where I'm based. We have a partner in Gothenburg, University of Gothenburg, in London, University of Westminster, in Dublin, Technological University Dublin, and in Barcelona, the Open University of Catalonia. So those 5 partners allow us to offer comparative analysis of the relationship between festivals and events and public spaces in those 5 different environments. So we're kind of focused on sort of 3 main things really. We're interested in the types of festive space that exist across Europe and the cities that we're focusing upon. And that might be, parks, squares, streetscapes. So where festivals and events actually take place. We're interested in what that means for who uses those spaces, who may be brought into those spaces as a part of coming to and attending festivals and events, and what that might mean for debates about inclusivity in these cities. And thirdly, we're interested in the longer term implications, so the durability of these relationships. So festival and events may bring people in for a period of time, but that might not really alter the way in which people use those spaces. So we're interested in exploring those things. Prior to COVID, some of the interesting things that people were talking to us about were about how parks and squares and streets are sometimes overused for festivals and events. They maybe create problems associated with privatising space, where commercial actors are able to participate and use those spaces, and some people are excluded or prevented from perhaps accessing those because of the need to pay or to access a ticket before you can use those spaces. Some public spaces are actually closed off, barriered off, or perceptual barriers to people feeling that they can use those spaces when festivals and events take place. An example might be large-scale music concerts and the like that take over spaces in parks and squares. At the same time, people were also talking to us about how important festivals and events are in terms of sense of pride and belonging in your city, the ability to access certain artistic or cultural genres, which is really enjoyable to people. Really important sense of development of social capital between people when they're able to access and participate in festivals and events. So lots of positive features. And then we experienced COVID-19 and the kind of lockdown measures that applied across Europe and obviously the world. And that allowed us, or made us, have to think about pivoting our project, thinking about what happens when A, public spaces are closed, B, festival and events are postponed or cancelled across the world. So we really began to focus upon some of the creative responses that we've seen to COVID. So rather than look at what's not possible and people not accessing spaces, we actually began to focus on, where are people, what are people doing during COVID? There were actually a number of creative and spontaneous and informal responses to COVID, where people would be having bingo outdoors in their local street, exercising in their local streets, having social gatherings at a distance with people playing music, DJ sets or the like in their streets and neighbourhoods. So what we're finding already is, as lockdown measures begin to ease or relax, that people are now using public spaces, being encouraged to use spaces more creatively perhaps. So urban local authorities and local municipalities are now encouraging more distance on pavement spaces, are encouraging bars, restaurants and other kind of cultural performances to be extending into streets and to extend into the civic realm that may not have been possible before, may have been prohibited. So we're seeing motorised vehicles in some ways being deprioritised in some places at the moment to allow people to access spaces and have distance. So what might be interesting about that is whether some of these sustain in the future, and we may see more experimental ways of giving people access to underused or disused spaces and to host activities that might be viewed as festive activities. large showcase style events are going to be very difficult for a long period of time because of the issues of social gatherings being prohibited. So we're looking to see new ways in which people begin to think about the use of their spaces to allow festivals and events actually to return in some way. These are hugely important things to people's lives. People love to come together, to congregate, to gather, to celebrate, to commemorate, to protest.
Hero, noon tigeenya biyya kana keessatti osoo hin dalaynu jennee ji'a takkaaf London deemnee mana mootummaa dura ciifne akka nyaannu beeyne akka dhugnu beeyne yoo dhukkubne firii akka yaalamnu beeyne garuu biyya teenya keessatti har'a guyyaa irraa kana waan ta'e namni kudhanii looyeraan ijoollee Mahamaffaan dhaqan soofamanii deebifaman. Gabroofataan durii bari kan hojjetu natti nyaata. Any information?